Here is exactly how the FAA Private Pilot written test works and how to pass it. 60 questions, 2 hours, 70% to pass. And one thing almost no study guide tells you. Every question you get wrong prints a code on your results, and your examiner is required to ask you about those exact areas at your. The FAA writes the Private Pilot Airplane Knowledge Test, and you sit it at an FAA-designated testing center run by the testing provider PSI. It is only the written half. Passing earns you a test report, not a license. The practical test that follows, an oral exam and a flight with an examiner, is what actually makes you a private pilot. 60 scored questions in 2 hours. That is 2 minutes a question, generous for a regulation, tight for a weight and balance computation you have to work. One detail unsettles people mid-test. The FAA may add unscored validation questions on top of the 60. They do not count for you or against you, and the published count of 60 excludes them, but the 2-hour clock includes the time to answer them. If the numbers run past 60, nothing has gone wrong. 70% to pass. On a 60-question test that is 42 correct, so you can miss 18 and still walk out with a pass. But the number you pass by matters far more here than on most exams, and this is why. Every question you answer incorrectly prints a code on your Airman Knowledge Test Report. Not a topic, a code, pointing at one specific task element in the Airman Certification Standards. And the current private pilot standards list those deficient elements as required minimum elements the examiner must test at your practical. Across most of the oral, your examiner samples as they see fit. Across your wrong answers, they do not get to choose. So scraping through at 71% hands, your examiner, a personalized list of 18 topics to open with. Eligibility is short. You must be at least 15 to sit the written. You do not need to be 17 until you apply for the certificate itself. You also need to test. Either a graduation certificate from an FAA-certificated pilot school, or a written statement or logbook endorsement from an authorized instructor saying you completed a ground training or home study course and are prepared. Set up your FAA tracking number beforehand and bring photo identification showing a real physical address. A post office box is not accepted. A pass is good for 24 calendar months, and the rule bites harder than it sounds. The written must still be inside that window in the month you finish your practical test, not the month you start training. Run long on flight training, and it expires underneath you. Fail, and there is no waiting period, but you must bring the failed report back with an endorsement from an instructor who has given you additional training and judged you ready. What is actually on it? There is no percentage breakdown to study to because the FAA does not publish one. The knowledge areas are in the regulations themselves. Part 61 lists 13 of them, and the test samples across all 13 without telling you the proportions. So do not go hunting for a weighting table. There is not one. Treat all of it as fair game. Organize your study by the material's natural spine instead, the rules, the environment, the machine, and the pilot. And know where candidates. Most overstudy the machine because aerodynamics and systems feel like real flying. They understudy the environment, airspace, and weather, which is where nearly all the pure actually lives. 3 real questions from the free bank. First, airspace. Approaching Class C you transmit, and the controller replies, aircraft calling approach, stand by. May you enter? No. Class C requires 2-way radio communication to be established, and that happens only when the controller answers using your aircraft's call sign, proof they have identified you specifically. A generic aircraft calling shows somebody was heard, not who. And notice what the question is not. Class C needs established communication, not a clearance. Clearance is the Class B rule, sitting right there as a wrong answer. Second, aerodynamics. You roll into a left turn on ailerons alone and the nose yaws right. Why? The down-deflected right aileron makes more drag than the raised left one. It raises that wing's angle of attack and its induced drag, dragging the rising wing back and swinging the nose away from your turn. That is adverse yaw. The distractors are all real effects put in the wrong place. Slipstream, gyroscopic precession, a lift increase on the raised wing. And coordinated rudder cancels adverse yaw, it does not make the airplane turn. The bank does. Third, regulations. A private pilot has not flown in 4 months and wants to carry 2 friends in a tailwheel airplane. What first? 3 takeoffs and 3 landings as sole manipulator of the controls in the preceding 90 days, and because it is a tailwheel airplane, each landing to a full stop. That last clause is the whole question. The same rule permits touch and go landings in an airplane. The 12 months with an instructor option is the flight review, a different rule entirely. So, 4 ways to prepare. 1. With no published weightings, study to the 13 knowledge areas in the regulation rather than a prep book's chapter split. The regulation is the only official list of what is fair game. 2. Drill the airspace and weather minimums until they are automatic. They are pure recall, heavily tested, and the block most often left until last. 3. Practice reading charts, symbols, and instrument indications from a description, and compute with the tools you will actually have on the day. 4. Aim well above 42. Every extra right answer is 1 fewer topic your examiner is required to put to you at the oral. To recap, 60 scored questions, 2 hours, 42 correct to pass. Minimum age 15, plus an instructor endorsement or a pilot school graduation certificate. The result lasts 24 calendar months and must still be valid in the month of your practical test. No published weighting table, 13 knowledge areas, all fair game. And every wrong answer becomes a required question at your oral. Practice all 7 knowledge areas free at .com/en/private-pilot. Regulations and airworthiness, airspace and operations, aviation weather, aerodynamics and systems, navigation, performance and weight and balance, and aeromedical and decision-making in English, Chinese, or Spanish, with a full explanation on every answer.